Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the city issues a warning to residents.
Don't open the door if you see somebody out there that you're not expecting, that you don't recognize. Talk to them through the door.
People impersonating city employees are knocking on doors. How you can avoid being scammed. Plus, contracting the Zika virus from mosquitoes may be rare, but there's still a risk. How new methods aim to find it before it spreads. And the demand for gas is at the highest level in decades. What this means for your pocket. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Thursday, August 22nd. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. We begin tonight with a warning. Scammers are impersonating city employees. Their goal is to get inside your home and rip you off.
Please don't let anybody that you have not made a prior appointment with into your house, whether it's a utility worker, construction worker, or anybody.
Tonight, a warning from the San Diego Police Department. Scammers are going door to door impersonating city employees. The goal, to gain access into your home and burglarize it. SDPD, along with the city's Public Utilities Department, held a press conference today to address recent victims in La Jolla and Bird Rock.
2 people masquerading as utility workers gained entrance to a couple homes and were able to get away with a significant amount of jewelry and cash.
As Lieutenant Steve Barron explains, be on the lookout because it's not unusual.
This is a common scam, the utility worker scam, where people will come up to the door and say they're from either a water department, electric department, Cox Cable Company, any of those out there, and saying they need to check something in the home. Frequently it's with 2 people. While one distracts the person, the other goes around the home and steals jewelry, cash, whatever they can find of value.
And seniors are a main target.
They do target the elderly, and unfortunately, we've had some victims who are beginning to suffer some cognitive issues, and because of that, the suspects see that, and they'll keep going back for payments over and over again.
Shauna Lawrence from the Public Utilities Department reminds residents, unless you expect the person, it's probably a scam.
The Public Utility Department does not need to get into your house to test water or for any other scenario unless there's an appointment made in advance.
So how do you protect yourself against imposters? 1, ask to see an employee ID badge. Check if their vehicle matches the utility company. And finally, when in doubt, lock them out.
Just don't open the door if you see somebody out there that you're not expecting, that you don't recognize. Talk to them through the door. For your safety, if you don't feel safe, you don't have to open your door. So that would be my number 1 recommendation.
So far, no arrests have been made in these latest cases. If you think you were scammed in the past or if you face a similar situation in the future, SDPD wants you to call 619-531-2000. Local officials and business leaders in National City are aiming to avoid a repeat of the 2010 census. They believe their immigrant majority city was undercounted. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us about the city's efforts led by its new mayor.
At a press conference on Thursday morning, National City's mayor said the city's population is over 40% foreign-born. And that means census takers next year will have to deal not only with language barriers, but fears about the security of the information they're providing to the government. Here's a map created by Sandag showing the hard-to-count areas of National City. Mayor Sotelo Solis said today during the press conference that almost 30% of National City residents were not counted during the 2010 census. This was before the idea of a citizenship question was even considered.
There's no citizenship question on the census survey. No citizenship question on the census survey. It is a 9-question survey, so it should be quick, easy, painless.
Low participation in the 2010 census hurt the growing low-income city when it came to both federal support and representation in Washington. Sotelo Solis says the city will focus on making sure that residents on both ends of the age spectrum participate.
When we know that 0 to 5 ages are undercounted, and our older adult population is undercounted. We want to be purposeful in our efforts and the partnerships through the city with those agencies that are trusted individuals that will make sure that people know there is a census coming, but two, that there's no doubt as to the information that is getting collected will not be used for any other nefarious purpose.
National City is in the process of applying for part of the $1.56 million that the San Diego Association of Governments has set aside to help local governments launch efforts to get as close to 100% of participation in the census. After the press conference, the mayor and census officials led a presentation for local groups and businesses on how they can spread the word about the upcoming census and help shape the city's efforts to get an accurate count in the incredibly diverse city. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
We haven't heard much about the Zika virus recently with cases on the decline, but the threat remains. KPBS SciTech reporter Shalina Chatlani explains a new method of detecting unreported outbreaks.
Much like malaria, Zika is commonly transmitted through mosquitoes. It's been around for a while, but in 2016 there was a sharp increase in cases. Since then, the number of cases has declined. Christian Anderson, an infectious disease researcher at the Scripps Research Institute, said he wanted to find out whether there were some outbreaks that were going undetected.
So we had this big question that, okay, we don't see Zika cases reported, but is the epidemic really over?
Anderson created a methodology for detecting these cases. It involved two things: tracking where infected travelers went, and then looking at their biological samples, like blood, to see genetically where and when their virus originated.
We instead looked at what do travelers get. So travelers that come back into this country, for example, have been traveling around to Zika endemic countries. Do any of these actually get infections?
By coupling travelers' geographic data with biological data, Anderson said it created a type of map of where the disease may have originally started and where it could spread. In 2017, this method helped these researchers discover an undetected outbreak in Cuba. Now, Anderson says he thinks this research could help public health authorities track other infectious diseases, like dengue fever.
Right now, there's a lot of dengue activity across the world, and you can imagine doing things like this to actually potentially detect dengue cases in countries or regions where you didn't realize that there were dengue cases, for example.
Anderson says the method would need to be coupled with existing public health reporting. And he says it probably wouldn't work in rural areas where there are few travelers. For KPBS News, I'm Shalina Chatlani.
Angry over the number of horse deaths at Del Mar and other racetracks, animal rights demonstrators voiced their outrage. And they did so during the California Horse Racing Board's monthly meeting today in Del Mar. In the past month alone, 4 horses have died in Del Mar, another 30 during races or training at Santa Anita. Activists say enough is enough.
This is a barbaric sport. We're in 2019. When are you guys going to wake up? And I have a question for the doctor sitting over there that knows about drugs. What other drugs are these horses being given that we're not privy to? Where's the transparency?
Racing officials say they've taken every measure to keep the horses safe from issues regarding the track to training. They say that the health of the horses and jockeys is their biggest concern. The demand for gasoline has hit an all-time high. KPBS's Chris Underwood explains what this means for prices at the pump. I deleted that.
More drivers are heading to the pump. In fact, during the first full week of August, demand for gasoline hit its highest level since 1991.
At the end of summer, it's a little strange to see a number that high, but it just indicates that people are still taking their end of summer trips.
AAA spokesperson Jeanette Castellano says when demand goes up, gas prices typically go with it as supply is driven lower. Instead, prices are still dropping, just not as quickly. Earlier this month, prices had dropped by 10 cents or more across the nation. The latest numbers for San Diego show gas prices dropped 9 cents over the last 18 days. A handful of other states decreased by a bit less, just a nickel, including North Carolina, Maryland, and Georgia. Still, prices across the country are lower than last year. According to AAA, states with the least expensive gas is found in Louisiana, Mississippi, and South Carolina. The highest include California, Hawaii, and Washington. But make sure to fill up now.
Gas prices are cheap and they're going to continue to be cheaper into the fall. Right now, they're on average about 25 cents less than they were a year ago.
Castellano says not to expect demand to continue like it has. She expects it to go down at the official end of summer, after Labor Day. Chris Underwood, KPBS News.
AAA reports that across the country, gas prices are going for about $2.50 or less. The job market isn't as hot as previously thought. The Labor Department now says the economy added 500,000 fewer jobs last year than first reported. A number of factors contributed to the revision, including 180,000 job cuts in the retail sector. The new numbers aren't enough to bring up the unemployment rate, which is at a nearly 50-year low. Mornings are starting out cloudy with plenty of sunshine later in the day, but one question is, will this heat stick around? Meteorologist Regina Miller has our forecast.
Well, we started things off with some low clouds, and you can see satellite and radar. Things are pretty quiet, and we've got some heat across the mountains and points to the east here as an area of high pressure. But we do have a trough dropping down, so an upper level feature. You can kind of see some clouds here. That is going to bring some cooling to the coast and inland areas for Friday. Tonight, we have a temperature of 66 degrees, partly cloudy in the metro areas. Our temperature for tonight in Oceanside, 62. We'll see some of those late night low clouds starting to form. Borrego Springs is at 73, mostly clear for tonight. And for Friday, heat expands in interior locations. So the mountains and points east, we're going to keep things pretty hot. But along the coast, it's actually going to be a little bit below our average, slightly. 74 in San Diego, 76 in Oceanside, morning clouds giving way to sunshine. Borrego Springs, though, 106 degrees. And looking ahead to the weekend, we'll actually see the heat expanding and some of the humidity increases from tropical storm Ivo that is off the coast. It'll increase some of the humidity and maybe some high clouds for Friday and into the start of the weekend. Our temperatures will be warming up. Sunday, we're at 83, Monday, 81 degrees and partly sunny. Inland areas, our temperature is 85 for your Friday, partly sunny, and then we are back up to 90 by Saturday, 93 on Sunday, mostly sunny skies this weekend. And in the desert locations, mostly sunny on Friday, a temperature of 106, so it's still very warm, very hot actually. And then on Saturday, our temperature is 103, 104 for Sunday. And as we head into the mountain locations, 79 degrees, sunshine and nice on Friday, mostly sunny, and 79 on Saturday. And we're at 79 on Sunday as well, with lots of sunshine. I'm Regina Miller, KPBS News.
San Diego Congressman Scott Peters says he's committed to dealing with climate change, but he will not be supporting the Green New Deal. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson sat down with the Democrat to discuss his climate change playbook and legislation he'd like to see passed.
We're speaking with Congressman Scott Peters here at the KPBS studios. You have a position on the Green New Deal. What is it?
I don't think it's bold, and I don't think it's action. Look, I totally support the enthusiasm that it's brought. I'm really happy to see that voters appear to be interested in what I've been interested in for 20 years, which is climate action, and they're taking votes based on that. But the Green New Deal is not bold in that it doesn't bring anybody else in. It is the easiest thing in the world to go talk to a bunch of people you agree with and give a fiery speech. The hard thing is to go to the middle of the room, find people maybe you don't agree with, and get them to work with you on solutions. And action means bringing Republicans to the table. The problem with the Green New Deal is, well, two, is one is it's just basically there's no legislation in it. You have to follow up with legislation to actually implement it. But two, it contains some things in there that I just don't agree with, like guaranteed jobs from the federal government and free college. We could talk about those separately, but it tends to push people away from the issue where we really need people to come together to get to net zero by mid-century.
Okay, you've come together with your climate playbook.
Right.
Explain to me what that is and how that works.
Rather than looking for something divisive, we decided to look for all the solutions that are out there already. I mean, the big difference is not that this election brought awareness on climate. It brought Democrats into the majority. And a lot of us have been working on these things, haven't been able to get them to the House floor because leadership wouldn't let us do that. So we're looking at what we can do. We've already agreed on bringing the United States back into the Paris Agreement. What can we do on decarbonizing electricity, industry, manufacturing, agriculture? transportation. Where can we agree on things like adaptation? What are we going to do about the effects we know will come from climate change already? And many of these bills that are out there already are bipartisan, and we can get them passed. I think one thing people need to realize is that the Green New Deal is not any of those actual steps. If you pass the Green New Deal today, you'd have to take these actions tomorrow. I'm already onto that.
A lot of the bills in your climate playbook actually reference the Green New Deal.
What we wanted to show was that if you wanted to implement the Green New Deal, you wanted to achieve those goals, we all agree we need to get to net zero carbon emissions by mid-century. You need to take the steps we've outlined in the Green New Deal. Now we're going further and we're trying to prioritize those things. What would make the biggest difference? And we're continuing to work to find out what would really help us come together to save the planet. But the notion that we are able to snap our fingers and get through this is really misguided, I think.
What had made progress so far in that climate playbook?
We passed H.R. 9, which is an effort to get the United States back into the Paris Agreement, which every other country in the world is part of, which is the notion we're all going to come together and solve the climate crisis together. We've asked in H.R. 9 for President Trump to give us his plan if he doesn't like the plans that were out there before. We passed 9 of the bills in the climate playbook through my committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House. Those go to the House floor. And we're working on bipartisan approaches for new bills, whether it's on methane capture or tax treatment for new baseload energies like hydropower or geothermal, and for accounting better for extreme weather that comes from climate change. We've actually passed the bill on that through the House and into the Senate.
Talk to me about your district. How is your district going to be affected as the climate changes?
Back in 2010, I was chair of the climate initiative for the San Diego Foundation. One of the things we did was we funded research on that very question. There's 3 main effects in San Diego County. One is sea level rise. One is more intense wildfires, which we've seen, I think, over the past decade or so. And one is water supply issues. Throughout the state, California is going to be faced with water supply issues. Those are all effects of climate change that will be felt here in San Diego.
Congressman Peters, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Once again, that was KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson interviewing San Diego Congressman Scott Peters. $1 trillion. The federal deficit is expected to top that mark next year. That's much higher than government forecasters predicted. This comes from a new projection by the Congressional Budget Office. Its forecast says the deficit will reach $960 billion this year. Then in 2020, it will cross over $1 trillion. Newly added spending measures are behind the change. Across the country, we could see more unintended pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases. That's the warning coming from Planned Parenthood. Leaders have withdrawn from a $260 million federal program due to new restrictions over abortions. Today, I spoke to Sita Walsh with Planned Parenthood of the Pacific Southwest about what this means for patients.
The decision for Planned Parenthood to withdraw from Title X was based entirely on the gag rule that was associated with it. This is a medically unethical and dangerous gag rule. What it means is that Planned Parenthood cannot discuss abortion referrals with patients. And this is something that the American Medical Association, Planned Parenthood, and many others are suing the Trump-Pence administration over, because you cannot interfere with providing a patient with full information about their health care.
And with the internet and so much information more easily accessible than years past, why does Planned Parenthood need to refer patients to abortion services or inform them about abortion services? Why is that something that's needed?
Abortion is a small but important part of what Planned Parenthood does. And the access to abortion has been around. It's been safe and legal since it became the law of the land with Roe v. Wade over 46 years ago. And we believe that we're doing a really good job at reducing the number of unintended pregnancies with the birth control and sexual education programs we have. But it still occurs. 1 in 4 women will become pregnant and request an abortion in her lifetime. So we think it's an important service, and it's part of our core mission and values to provide women with all of the health care, sexual and reproductive health care that they need throughout their reproductive life cycle.
Who do you think will be hit the hardest by this? You talked about regionally there's going to be an impact, but within those regions, who might be hit the hardest?
The tragic thing about this is that low-income people will be affected the most. People who are in rural and underserved areas will be affected the most. And that's why throughout the country, Planned Parenthood and the American Medical Association and others are saying this is an unethical gag rule, and what we want is for Congress to act and for the courts to reverse this ruling so that we can welcome back Title X grant fundings to the Planned Parenthood family.
And worst case scenario, if this withdrawal continues and draws out in court, what could happen? Could locations be closed, or what might happen?
You know, Planned Parenthood has been around for 102 years, and we have weathered many situations, political and otherwise, and we always come through. We come through because of the donors that help us, we come through because of the legislators that help us, and the support that we have in the community. America appreciates Planned Parenthood and the services we provide. I think that we will always find a way to keep our doors open. That's what Planned Parenthood does. And while some people may have a situation where they have to pay a smaller amount of money to come through, or they have to wait longer, it's going to vary state by state. But we will see how it goes through and progresses, and how the litigation progresses through the courts. And we are hopeful that we will prevail and that we will be able to rejoin the Title X program. It's a good and important program.
Sita Walsh, Vice President of Marketing and Communications, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Anti-abortion groups have applauded the Trump administration's move to forbid abortion referrals. Meanwhile, gluten-free products are pretty trendy nowadays, but doctors say it's linked to a serious medical complications. In today's Health Minute, Mandy Gaither explains how eating gluten-free as a child can affect your tolerance later in life.
For millions of people around the world, eating gluten can lead to trouble. Their bodies can't handle the proteins in it, causing damage to their small intestine. This is known as celiac disease, and approximately 1 in every 100 people worldwide suffer from it, according to the Celiac Disease Foundation. And new research suggests that the amount of gluten you eat as a young child might determine how your body responds to it later in life. From 2004 to 2010, researchers tracked more than 6,600 newborns in 4 countries, all who carried a gene associated with celiac disease and type 1 diabetes. Every few months, until they were 5 years old, researchers recorded how much gluten the child ate compared to healthy children of the same age. Those who ate more gluten had a 7.2% increased risk of celiac disease for each additional gram eaten per day. At the end of the study, nearly 20% developed celiac disease autoimmunity, the beginning stages of gluten intolerance, and 7% were diagnosed with celiac disease. For today's Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
San Diego Underground Film Festival kicks off its 5th year tonight at 10th Avenue Arts Center. KPBS arts reporter Beth Acamando is there tonight highlighting one of the performances showcased at the festival.
I'm here at 10th Avenue Theater where the San Diego Underground Film Festival kicks off tonight. And one of the things they're doing is called expanded cinema. And these are performances that involve people like Melissa Ferrari, who is a magic lanternist. So to start with, explain what a magic lantern is.
Sure. So magic lanterns are antique projectors that were really popular in the 1800s. And they were the main moving image technology before film was invented. So they're basically very fancy slide projectors.
And you got interested in these because you're an animator, and this is one of the earliest forms of animation.
Yeah. They're considered pre-cinematic animation because they use slides that have mechanized components. So using levers or gears, you can perform the image to create very stilted senses of animation.
So show us how one of these works.
Sure. So it's basically a combination of light with lenses, and then you take wooden slides and put them into the slide holder, and then they project an image out of the projector. So in my work, I'm using all magic lantern slides that I create, but they're based on antique designs.
So you use hand-painted slides that you've created, and what kind of a process is that?
So for most of my slides, I either draw with ink directly onto the glass, or I draw with pastels, and then I have them printed on IMAX film and mounted within the slide.
So you're kind of using a mix of old and new technology.
Yeah, definitely.
And explain what your performance is going to be like on Friday.
So my performance tomorrow is an experimental documentary that's 35 minutes long that uses magic lantern projection as well as hand-drawn animation that's digitally projected. And it's about cryptozoology, which is the study of creatures that may or may not exist, so Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or the Yeti. And it's looking at intersections of religious extremism and different political aspects to contemporary cryptozoology media, and also just the ethics of fake documentary.
And how do you find this kind of low-tech technology engages the audience?
It's surprising how effective it is, given how old the technology is. I think there's something about seeing something that's performed by hand and something that's so crude and still can be so evocative emotionally that actually can be more impactful than maybe CG reenactment or, a VR experience.
All right. If you want to see the Magic Lantern in action, you can check out Melissa Ferrari's show on Friday night. The San Diego Underground Film Festival continues through Sunday at the 10th Avenue Arts Center. I'm Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Thanks, Beth. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.